what you'll see as we go through the materials today is a really pretty comprehensive look through some of the things that we're doing to provide and allow you all to stay up to date with your SAP solutions, as well as introduce some new things that our friends at LCR Dixon are doing as well. So with that, quick round of introductions. My name is Brian Wilczewski. If you've joined any SAP special interest groups or attended any of the exchanges over the last 7 or 8 years, you've probably run across me. I've been with Vertex 8 years now and responsible for our relationship with SAP. Jeff, would you say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Brian, and thanks for reminding me just to say a few words. I'm Jeff Geis. I work with Brian Wilczewski and Susie Su. I've been with Vertex for a total of 11 years, and I'm the technical product manager for SAP.
And Susie?
Hi, everyone. Susie Su. I'm one of the co-founders of LCR Dixon. Been working in this space, implementing tax engines with SAP for over 25 years now. And as co-founder of LCR Dixon, our focus is on SAP-based solutions. We've been partnered with Vertex for many years in co-developing the accelerator, and we are the developer of the Plus tools as well. So I'll talk about some of those later today.
Great, and a quick thank you in advance to both our presenters for joining me here today. I know there's a lot of work to prepare these things. Our objectives, everyone can read through those. I mean, really, as I mentioned, we're here to demonstrate to you what we do and how committed we are to our partnership with SAP, some of the new solutions and existing solutions and where we plan on taking those, and how various solutions from our partners, LCR, can be applied to help you with your Vertex integration, Vertex solutions. What we'll go through today after this quick introduction is a little bit of background around some of the, not background, little introduction, probably some of the changes that you are all facing. We won't dwell on that too long because many of you probably already know the challenges facing you in your jobs today. But then we'll go into how Vertex is managing to that change, some of the things we're doing, and then we'll close with Susie in a discussion around some of the innovation she's bringing in as well into our SAP ecosystem with that. And we'll wrap up and afford some time at the end for some Q&A. We're going to talk a little bit about the changing SAP landscape. And as we look at this in terms of a background theme for all of you, we're going to walk through this. I'm sure most of you look at, boy, what's impacting me on my job? You're faced with things like, you combine a few of these, right? You look at real-time insight, new technologies. You start getting into what data is available to me and how can I use it to be more effective? You also have opportunities. You see AI, artificial intelligence. How do I use that data? How do I bring that into the processes? How can I improve efficiency that way? You look at some of the other, how do I bring in greater, faced at a higher level, how do we optimize and improve efficiency? One of the things that you'll see there, and I think is a great example, is the one right below that, which is S4 migration. A great example. Obviously, we're all facing pressure by SAP around this 2027 date, where extended support rolls in and customers are going. So most businesses are faced with the challenge of what do I do and how do I plan for that? And when I'm doing that, it's creating opportunities to look at potentially optimizing my processes or new processes or bringing in new applications. And importantly, ways to connect systems and other applications like a Vertex. Moving on in terms of things at a higher level, macro level look, I'd thrown compliance changes up there earlier, but compliance obviously is a changing landscape there where you see impacts to not only reporting and compliance, but also on the determination side as it may impact, rule changes and things like that have to be accounted for as you go through this. But also at a high level, most companies that we deal with, and most of you are faced with M&A activities. How to account for new acquisitions there, how to bring those into the business. Technology and platform decisions around cloud or on-premise. How do we bring in new applications in there? And as I mentioned earlier, how do I use S4 to evaluate and implement new business process? Obviously a great opportunity for change, or the ability to impact folks around change. And lastly, you look at maybe from a high level, partnerships, and we'll go more and more, partnerships and how to expand partnerships. You look at, we started with a poll on COVID, and we looked at just, personally, how has COVID impacted you and some of the things in business. But COVID's obviously had a phenomenal impact on businesses in terms of identifying new business opportunities or new supply chains. We may be doing business differently in terms of reaching customers now, and being able to do that, especially more so, as I mentioned, with the COVID impacts. But we look at these, and as we go through the next part of this, I think it's easy to put these in a perspective, as I mentioned, of we're obviously faced with macro level changes and micro level changes. Talked about, some of the macro around business efficiency and S4 migrations, but get down into the micro level, and Susie will cover some of that even within hers as we get down into detailed processes in AR or AP, and how do I test those processes? How do I test changes that I've made in the thing? So did want to recognize that we understand, you're joining this to understand how Vertex is helping you, but we do feel the pain. Looking at how we're aligning on that, if you've joined our SAP SIG or been in some of our previous presentations, we like to present the SAP ecosystem as really as a growth of what we're doing there. And I know when I started here at Vertex in 2012, we supported, and probably many of you have been around, we supported SAP ECC. Over this time with change, as I mentioned, SAP has introduced S/4HANA, and we're facing these dates. Do want to make sure everyone's aware that, we have expanded, and our roadmaps have grown in support of that now, with support of S/4HANA and S/4HANA Enterprise Cloud, as well as S/4HANA Cloud. Any of you who are planning that journey, we've introduced some stuff. We've introduced a solution there, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail as we go. But if you weren't aware, we also support, trying to advance it one more, SAP Business by Design. And moving on, and we talked about this in the face of COVID, solutions we've introduced over the last few years around Commerce Cloud, and we've seen Commerce Cloud and the ability to, from an e-commerce and omni-commerce perspective, be able to address new changes in selling to customers. We do support the old SAP Hybris, which is now Commerce Cloud. We'll talk a little bit later, but SAP Subscription Billing is the latest solution there for those that are looking at that and consuming that from a delivery and a content billing perspective. And then also in the last few years, from what the intelligent spend side, really looking at it from a procurement standpoint and an invoice management standpoint. So new integration introduced in the last 2 years around SAP Ariba. And just recently, already in discussions with a few customers around SAP Concur invoice solution in how we can assist with that. And if you look at beyond the integrations and think of Vertex Solutions, many are familiar with the Accelerator. If this were a normal year for Exchange, we'd be doing some more sessions around the Accelerator. The Accelerator 101, and we had hoped this year to do a 201 to go into deeper. Look forward to maybe some of that in some upcoming webinars. Also the Plus tools. Talked about our relationship with LCR Dixon, which a little over 5 years ago we started to bring in additional solutions and allow you to deal with change and deal with the use of an engine better. And we're going to go into a lot more detail today on the Chain Flow Accelerator and what's new there and how we're helping from a VAT determination standpoint. And lastly, give you a peek today at Vertex Tax Service and how that fits into our solution. If you pay attention closely to the picture on the left, you'll see some new clouds show up. So in alignment with SAP's roadmap globally, we've introduced a new integration approach to satisfy connection with some of the SAP applications. Just to point out, as always, with SAP, more details on all of these you can find on the SAP App Center as an approach to learn more about these solutions from an SAP perspective. We get into these a little bit walking through this. We talked about change up front with S/4HANA and there. If you look at what we're doing there with respect to change, has really been trying to minimize the impact to you as you consider moving to S/4HANA, either from a greenfield or brownfield approach. We've just recently taken O Series and the SIC 9.0 through recertification with S/4HANA, and included the central finance deployment option. This is something that SAP requires of us every 3 years. Stay tuned as they make changes to S/4HANA on a yearly basis. S/4HANA 2020, obviously some of you may be exposed to the next version of that coming. We're waiting for a direction from SAP if that will become more of an annual certification. But right now it's every 3 years. We did do upgrades to the SIC to support some of the newest 9.0 functions in there. So if you're looking at upgrading the SIC as part of this, a good opportunity. If you want to take advantage of some of the new stuff there, like lat long capability and such. The other new thing that we introduced, I think a year and a half ago, but we do have a pretty good number of customers now deploying on, is we introduced support for S/4HANA as a database option for O Series. A couple key requirements there that as you look at this, I know most of you are moving to 9.0, but you do have to be on 8.0 SR3 and above, and it does require SAP HANA. And I think we said it previous Exchange, we are taking that through certification with SAP as well. So there'll be an added level of comfort there. Additionally, did mention with S/4HANA Cloud, we introduced this a few years ago, may or not. We did this under co-innovated, you may or may not be familiar with it. We did this under a co-innovated program with SAP where we worked collectively with them to develop this integration. For those that are considering S/4HANA Cloud, what I'd want to point out there that's particularly innovative is it's now a cloud-based integration where the traffic does flow through the SAP Cloud Platform and Cloud Platform integration there. It is, the new integration there is for US only, and as we get into, and I'll ask Jeff in a minute to talk about Vertex Tax Service there, you'll see that our Vertex Tax Service is how we'll address determination in the rest of the world with S/4HANA Cloud. Do want to point out, as always with S/4HANA Cloud, there is no accelerator involved in that as a public cloud solution, and we can't introduce that. So thinking of how we align with SAP as SAP is changing things, many of you may be familiar with SAP's framework for global tax and some of the solutions they're introducing there, and you'll see around compliance, document compliance, and their advanced compliance reporting. Where we've really focused on for the time being is around the SAP Tax Service, where we've aligned on the determination standpoint. You may ask why? Well, it's about the fact that that's a logical connection point for O Series and On Demand and Vertex Cloud, bringing in the power of the engine and automation there into the determination side. But what I'll point out to, which is key, if you are considering SAP solutions across that framework, we do that in a way that's non-disruptive. So you can still use the other SAP solutions for as you wish there for reporting, or if you're using tax compliance to be able to do validation and data control there. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jeff at this point and ask him, we're going to dive a little bit deeper on tax service and some of the other changes we made in support of that. So, Jeff?
Yep. Thank you, Brian. That was a very good overview of the SAP roadmap and what we're doing at Vertex to support their initiatives. Let's talk about tax service, first. So as you mentioned, this is the new integration approach for global requirements. Global meaning SAP wants to support consuming applications, not just S/4HANA or ECC, but in the future, some of their solutions may utilize this concept where tax as a service capability. And this is then configured through the SAP localization hub, meaning a customer may pick the solution that they would want. For example, if they want to use native SAP functionality or the native SAP data, then they could easily configure that through the localization hub. If they want to use Vertex, then they could also do that. What that means then is any solution that uses this tax service, such as Vertex Tax Service, will leverage SAP's tax service API and schema, meaning SAP defines all the structures, all the fields that may be used for this service, and that's what we're doing. And this tax service will support their initiatives on S4HANA Cloud, S4HANA, and subscription billing. For SAP ECC, we at Vertex did our development team did the connection to use this service. And this solution integrates gives us the ability to integrate with Vertex on-premise, on-demand, or our O series in the cloud. Next, we want to talk about for an update is the Ariba buyer application, where we have worked with our counterparts at Ariba to support their version 2 API. This gives us the ability to call Vertex at certain points of the Ariba buyer procurement process. It also supports multi-levels of jurisdictions. For example, in the United States, in the past, they only supported state-level taxes, but now it supports city level, district level, and all the other levels that our customers have enjoyed using Vertex O series capabilities. It also supports outside of the vendor charge calculation. It supports self-assessed tax and VAT, as well as reverse charge processes. It supports North America and Europe, and other geographies or countries are also in the roadmap for this Ariba buyer solution. And it's compatible with our O series on-premise and O series on-demand solutions. Here's an overview of the processes that is involved for tax calculation within Ariba. At requisition time, Vertex is called by Ariba. Then the calculated amount of taxes at that first requisition is then carried over to the purchase order. When the vendor issues the invoice reconciliation will then call again Vertex for tax calculation and validation. And finally, when the invoice approval process, this is calling Vertex again for the final time to make a decision based on what the user selected. It may select to self-assess the calculation or post the invoice as charged by the vendor, or short pay, or whatever decision is made by the invoice approver. As Brian mentioned, we also did some work with SAP to handle SAP Concur Invoice, where this is a batch process, basically just to validate the taxes that are coming from Concur before it goes through the next process of their workflow. And this supports US and Canada, and this only supports Concur Invoice, not the traditional Concur travel and expense application that you might be familiar with. And this supports O series functionalities such as flex fields and tax assist rules. Another update is for our Q series customers, where for technical reasons we had to develop or find a way to connect Q series to SAP. And the best way to do this is through the SAP integration component. This is the same connector that you use now for O series. This just allows us to use a proven solution to connect to our older Q series solutions, that is still being used by many of our customers. And the SIC STQ connector will operate on the latest Q series 8.0 release and provides the ability for our customers to keep using the solution in their ECC environment. It's time for another polling question. So if you would just please respond to this, we'll maybe give you about 30 seconds. Where would you like to see Vertex focus innovation and investment with SAP solutions? Please select all that may apply. Yeah, this will help us define what we might be working on in the future. So we appreciate all your help. I think we have another 10 seconds. Thank you very much. And it looks like we have integration with SAP systems. End-to-end solutions is the most one that's critical to most of our audience today. And
it's good that we focus a lot of attention there, isn't it, Jeff?
Yep. Great. Yes, and thank you very much. Yep.
And as always, one comment on that before Jeff goes. If at any point, as we get to the end of this, obviously Jeff and I and Susie's contacts on it. If there's other things you would like to see, feel free always to reach out.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. And then to move on to our core SAP solutions, meaning for ECC and S4HANA, I would like to give our team members an update. As you mentioned, Brian, a lot of our customers are still using the Indirect Tax Accelerator for SAP ERP, and this is the solution used for our RFC-based solution. Basically, we have upgraded or maintained the solution to support some of the O Series 9.0 features, such as the lat long coordinates feature to derive a jurisdiction code. It also provides the ability for the users to validate their notes that are applied in their system through the vNote functionality. It still supports plants abroad, plus the other components that were supported by Accelerator 3.0. With this new upgrade, we also support SAP JCO 3.1. And to talk about our new VAT solution for ECC and S4HANA is the introduction of our Chain Flow Accelerator, which is a tool that allows for our customers and their implementing partners, as well as the tax professionals, to basically configure their processes through a visualization tool. And you will expand more on that tool later. And what this allows for our users is the data mapping for VAT relevant transactions. And then it basically allows the ability for the SAP system where we could enrich the data that will be used by the tax engine instead of relying on O Series tax assist rules. This tool then provides the ability for the enrichment of the data as it comes out of SAP before it reaches O Series. It supports SAP S4HANA and SAP ECC. It utilizes what we talked about earlier, that uses SAP's tax service API, and Vertex Tax Service here basically is a translator for the REST API call from SAP. Then Vertex Tax Service takes over to handle that call and transforms it into XML and returns back the tax results to SAP. It is a focused integration to support our global tax integration. It supports S4HANA, S4HANA Cloud, as well as SAP ECC. And as Brian mentioned earlier, one of the SAP developed components that this supports is SAP Subscription Billing. It integrates with our on-premise, on-demand, or our Vertex cloud solution. So this doesn't really replace the RFC-based solution in the US or for the cloud, the iFlow, but this is basically a new functionality in addition to the connections that you already know. And this is going to support our market outside the United States and Canada. So with that, it gives us the ability to enable the tax engine and for our customers to keep enjoying the features that O-Series provides. As an overview of what the solution is, this is imported into an SAP ECC or S4HANA system. It then gives you the ability as a user to configure the SAP localization hub, to select Vertex as the endpoint, and to enjoy the capabilities of Vertex engine, as you know, at the moment, for its tax content, the tax solution, and the services that it currently provides. With that is then we have a tax automation enabled. So why is it relevant from a VAT perspective? As we all know, within SAP, there is the concept of condition records, and this concept really is dependent on how a system is configured to come up with a proper conclusion that relies on your customer master and tax and material master tax classifications. And just to give an overview or a reminder on how SAP handles this, you have an access sequence that will handle your cross-border solutions within SAP, and you have a domestic solution and access sequence that would be a combination of your cross-border and the use of the customer and material tax classification just to come up with the proper tax code and the proper VAT rate based on a validity rate. What that implies then is that you have to maintain condition records within SAP that is also cumbersome to maintain. At the moment, we have the ability to create just one tax code to ensure that the call is made to Vertex without setting up all the condition records that you used to do for the standard SAP solution, or even for what you have done in the past for Accelerator. So essentially what that means is that the maintenance of your master data, the burden on the maintenance of that master data has been removed. So how does this improve VAT accuracy? So all the transactions still happens within SAP and ECC S4HANA, where your sales order billing document is created, purchase orders, and the invoicing associated with it. Then what happens then is that within this transaction, the tool, Sap Accelerator, then grabs all that data, enriches the data before it goes over to Vertex through the SAP localization hub. So when it goes to Vertex, Vertex already has all the right information to derive the proper calculation without employing the tax assist functionality. So how does that happen? And this is basically made possible by what we call the features of the Chain Flow Accelerator, where this allows us to have a visualization of the flow of goods within SAP, as well as the flow of documents, where in each of the document process, for example, from entity 2 to your customer, you have a sales order created and a billing document created, where in native SAP, if you don't do anything, a certain tax conclusion might come about. But in certain scenarios, you do not want the default solution, the default calculation happening by just looking at the ship to and the ship from. What this tool does is it employs a general mapping solution, which is going to be delivered with the solution to support the standard SAP processes from a VAT perspective, such as the who, what, why, where, and when. But as we all know, when we get into VAT, there are some transactions where if we do not enrich that data, then the wrong conclusion is made. So this tool gives us the ability basically to override the general mapping. And for example, if you map SAP, just like how you do Accelerator now, you could map your material number, your tax date, your plant, to define your ship to and ship from. But based on the location, your tax departure country or your destination country, if you change those, then the tax conclusion might change. And this gives you the ability to basically enrich the data through that visualization tool that I was talking about. First is within this visualization tool, you identify a process, you identify what is needed to make the proper calculation, and you have the ability to override it. A good example for this scenario, or for this to illustrate the functionality for this, is that if a customer picks up a product from a plant, for example, depending on what that customer has, a tax conclusion is made. But it may that tax conclusion may be changed based on what you pass to the system. So if, for example, this customer picks up the product and does not provide with the paperwork, then a specific conclusion is made. So there is a difference in the tax result based on what the general mapping provides and what you override provide. And with that, Brian, I am sending it back to you.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. And for those that remember the accelerator, it's hard to believe it's been 5 years ago. I mean, when we introduced it 5 years ago. It's similar types of benefits, I think. We've always talked, more power to the tax user, reduce reliance on IT, giving you greater control to manage the scenarios and the requirements. We view this much like the two of the ones there, in alignment with where SAP is going. If we touched upon it, SAP's this brings in tax service, new REST-based API approach that will become more standard for SAP moving forward. This aligns with that moving forward to support localization globally. We do envision this expanding to more SAP applications, such as subscription billing, and in the future others as they move this forward. And the traditional, like the accelerator reliability performance, we're going through certification around the tax service with SAP on this. Really, I think there's a whole host of benefits that are available through this. And we're pretty excited about this new solution. It's going to be available here at the end of the year. We're in early adopters right now doing this. I did see one question, and we'll come back at the end through a lot of them, but this does require an additional license. And it does require you to have additional content enabled from a determination standpoint. But with that, we're going to go to our next, before I turn it over to our friend Susie, we're going to go through our next polling question. Because this teaser, I tease it up for Susie. We like to joke. What areas related to change are causing you pain right now? So we've listed 6 items there. We'll give you a chance to respond to that. And Robert, we will go 50 minutes. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Let's see, what do we have?
And while we're waiting, Accelerator 3.1 will be released shortly. We're just, packaging the documentation to support the features for lat long, and that will be that should be released shortly.
So we've hit 70% response. Let's take a look. All right, biggest tie between new tax rules regulation, new master data as a challenge, causing pain. Yep. Pretty uniformly spread, Susie.
It is, yeah. We don't see any major outlay here. It's everything's within that little barrel code. That's very interesting. Okay, good.
Great.
Well, thanks for replying on that, everyone. And certainly it's good to see you're still engaged, especially since we passed the 5 o'clock hour here.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to move into, so both Jeff and Brian have been talking at what we view as being the macro level. You know, they talked about some major shifts in technology and changes happening in the whole SAP ecosystem. I'm going to dial it down to the level of, I guess, where they say the devil is always in the details. I'm going to bring it down to the level of the details and the areas of change that impact your system and the effectiveness of your overall tax system and how it operates within SAP. And that's where the Plus tools plug in. So we want to talk about some of the new innovations that we're bringing forth. We've got a number of new products that we're adding to the Plus tool lineup. So we want to make sure that you're aware of these. And a lot of them do address change at the micro level. And so I'll kind of talk about 3 major types of change. I just want to introduce to you just a few of the new products that are coming out or have already been released in the Plus tool suite. So you might already be aware along the top here, we've got the diagnostics program for analytics. We've got Scout for the jurisdiction code validations. We've got the 2 Flex RFC programs for the tax credits. The Flux Monitor is a program that actually monitors for change. And then we've got the Flex Tax program. This is the program we developed for use taxes on P-card. So those Plus tools have been around for a number of years. The bottom row here are our new products. And so we're adding to the Vendor Recon suite a Vendor Recon VAT application. And this is designed primarily for use outside of North America. Vendor Recon is a very popular product for AP automation and managing any differences between your vendor tax and the Vertex tax. Very popular in North America, and we've got a number of clients have asked for the same product to be applied globally. We've got some of our customers are deploying this to dozens of countries around the world. So Vendor Recon VAT has been out for a number of months now, and so that's available now. Comparatax is a new product that's going to be released very shortly. This is a product that is very much geared toward change. And what Comparatax does is, the way I like to describe it is if Diagnostax and FlexTax had a baby, it would be Comparatax. Basically what that means is it's a program that you can use to load in historical data and use it to bounce up against Vertex today. So you could use this to look back on historically posted, AP data. Right now we're rolling it out for the AP side. We'll eventually get it out to the AR side. But right now it's focused on the AP side. So you can have it look back and compare against previously posted AP invoices and the tax results and compare against Vertex today. So it'd be a really good application to do a health check for, to validate parallel testing, to monitor for any changes in content. So Comparatax is a pretty exciting program that we will be rolling out for that purpose. Next new product is drop shipment. And so what this is designed for is handling home state exemptions for your drop shipments. And this actually comes into play with change as well. We find one of the areas of struggle for a lot of customers, especially if you've got a lot of exempt customers and you do a lot of drop ships, is being able to manage those exemption certs for all the drop ship locations and apply home state exemptions. So this allows you to minimize the number of exemption certs you need to maintain for homestead exemptions if you have a dropship scenario. So it can help you reduce the amount of effort around new customer setups in Vertex and ECM by being able to apply these homestead exemptions. So that's the dropship program. And then Test Suite is a program that we are very excited about. This is a program you can use to run test cases, and it will help you create test scripts, validate data for test scripts, execute the test scripts, and analyze the results as well. And we're rolling this out for the P2P side first. They will be releasing the sales order to billing next year. And we can envision this being used for change as well, because we see it being a program you could use to validate your results, to see if there's change or fluctuation in your outcomes as a result of content changes. And finally, we've got a very exciting product out called SD blocking, and it's been sort of out in terms of a soft sense. We've got a major multinational company that's using SD blocking, and what this enables you to do is to set up rules to block transactions from posting through SD if they fail VAT or perhaps transfer pricing rules or trade flow rules where you don't want to permit certain combinations to complete. And where this comes in valuable from a tax and a change standpoint is it's a program that you can use to really be able to control and not allow disallowed combinations to occur. And so this is something that we see tax departments, controllers struggling with, is being able to keep tabs on what your user base is doing out there, what the business is doing, and being able to control that and affect, controls around secure certain transactions so that they don't occur that might have, downstream tax impacts that are negative. So this is a program we see as being relevant for change as well, because a lot of times tax departments are the flea on the hair or the tail of the dog. You're sort of at the end of the chain, and you have to deal with the fallout from things that might happen operationally. So some of these tools let you get ahead of that. All right. So if we talk about in terms of micro changes, how we see these applications applying, we can kind of divide the changes three ways. One is content system updates. So this is whether it's monthly updates, it could be TJC updates, it could be rate updates, rule updates, it could be updates that occur in your SAP system. There could be patches that get applied, OSS notes get applied. So that's going to happen, on a regular basis. Next type of change are your user inputs. It is a matter of fact that you in tax a lot of times have to respond to what your users are doing, whether it's procure to pay users, your AP folks, your buyers, whether it's your order to cash users who are creating sales orders and doing billing docs. And so being able to keep tabs on the tax impacts from those user inputs and the changes that can occur operationally can be quite a challenge. And the third area is around master data changes. So this is a constant thing happening in your SAP system as well, where you've got users creating new customers, vendors, new plants, creating new locations in the system, and being able to respond to that. So we see the Plus tools coming into play in a number of areas, as we kind of look at how they apply to all of these. We see nicely balanced out. We've got 3 Plus tools that assign to each one of these areas of change that we can view them as helping you control and get ahead of the change and manage the change. All right, so let's drill down a little bit further here. Okay, so let's talk about this content system changes. So these are happening all the time. And of course, you might find that periodically your TAIDs, otherwise known as tax jurisdiction codes, get updated. And in some cases, they might be expired. So we see this creating some impact during invoicing, where it might create invoice errors if you've got jurisdiction codes that are being sunsetted. And so what we have is we've got 2 approaches. You actually have a program within the accelerator that can be used for managing this change. And alternatively, you can also use Scout, which is another Plus tool. And this will help you validate and monitor for any changes in jurisdiction codes, especially those that have either been changed or now have been sunsetted. So you can make the changes to your, whether it's customers, vendors, open documents, get those changes made very quickly, especially after the beginning of a month, and be able to update those before they create you any issues in your transaction processing. In terms of your monthly rate and rule updates, we see, some tax impacts that can occur, some good, some bad, some that you may not be prepared for. So as there are monthly updates made to content rules, the category rules, the taxability changes, rate changes happen all the time. And being able to keep tabs on that can be a challenge. So we see two potential programs you can use for that. The first is Test Suite, which is the program that you can use to run test scripts, and you can repeat the test scripts, rerun them, re-execute them, look at the results, see if there's any change between 1 month and another. And then Comparatax is the other program we see as being quite valuable for this, where you can run historical data. You can run a month's worth of AP activity, bounce it up against a Vertex after the first of the month, and see if there are any deltas. And this will flag changes not only in taxability, but also flag any changes or delta in any tax rate changes. Okay. Just some questions I'm seeing coming up. I'm just going to address them here. Question around Scout. So Scout is really, and all of the Plus tools only reside within SAP. So it can only be used to update your SAP objects with the jurisdiction codes, or otherwise known as TAIDs. In terms of vendor recon, a question just came up around whether this requires a separate license for the VAT version, and the answer is yes, it will require a separate license. Okay, moving on to the second type of change. This is your user input changes. These are happening constantly. You might have dozens, hundreds, even thousands of users inputting transactional data that can impact you from a tax standpoint. So how do you get ahead of that? So in terms of those changes, one of the probably the most annoying for users is bad data inputs. Your tax engine, Vertex, and its ability to make a good calculation depends on the data inputs, whether it's the GL or material group or the customer or the cost object that's being used. Having good data being entered on those SAP documents is critical. If not, it could result in calculation errors. So we have diagnostics. This is a program that's actually been out for a number of years, and there's a feature within that called Data Fix. And what Data Fix does, it allows you to look for, detect, and set up rules to auto-correct bad data input combinations. This gives tax departments much more control around the tax outcome from data inputs, and as errors come about, you can really minimize that with diagnostics. When it comes to disallowed trade flows, where you might globally especially have invalid tax scenarios that you do not want to post through from a sales order standpoint, that's where the SD blocking tool can come about in order to block sales orders from completing if they fail tax combinations. Maybe there are certain combinations of ship tos and ship froms, registration statuses that you do not want to permit, and so you can set up rules to prevent certain sales orders from completing. And the next type of user changes, system changes. We've seen certainly cases where there could be system changes made from a maintenance standpoint that can impact the overall tax outcomes. And so we've got a new product that we'll be rolling out called Dashboard, which goes hand in hand with the SAP Fiori or UI5, basically being able to see things from a dashboard standpoint, and for tax departments to be able to have a daily instantaneous view of what's going on in the system. What jobs are running, what jobs have failed, what's your accuracy percentage, how many new pieces of master data have been added in the system. So we're pretty excited about Dashboard. This is going to give you a nice view of what's going on in your system. And then finally, we've got the master data changes. So we saw in the poll that was probably the one that eked out a little bit of a majority. And that is one of the pain points is changes that happen in SAP master data. People are adding new things all the time. You have to know whether or not to add them or map them in Vertex. So certainly we've got the Flux Monitor program that does that. And we've actually taken the Flux Monitor and we're building that out to another degree and building out what's called a program called Flux Builder. And what this is the ability to see change and then affect an outcome on that change. So for example, the first stream that we're working on are the customers. This can be a challenge when new customers are added and you have to go and then create an exemption cert for that in ECM in order to be able to exempt that customer. So that flow can be a little bit discombobulated. You've got an SAP data change. You've then got to get into Vertex and load that in there. And so we've developing Flux Builder, and what this is going to do is connect the dots. It'll allow you to see any new customers, and then very easily from your SAP screen, highlight, click, and create a call out to Vertex and update it with your customer exemption record, as well as the customer master record. So what we're looking to do is really tighten up that integration between your customer master in SAP and your Vertex ECM, so that you can very quickly and seamlessly add new exemption certs when customers are added in SAP. This will always also allow you to attach images. So if you've got the exemption cert image, you can also push that through the program and have that update the record as well. Okay, and then the next area is just with dropship customers to help you manage what could be a very large number of dropship customers that you add in SAP, the dropship program. We're very excited about that, and that's going to help you manage any home state exemptions and apply reciprocity rules. Okay. All right, so I think we're kind of getting to time here, and we've got another poll question coming up. Certainly, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Brian or Jeff about these programs, and we can certainly schedule some more detailed demos on them. So I guess the next question in polling is to ask you about how you see value of whether it's the LCR Dixon or the Vertex products and help you managing your change. So if there are particular areas that you see value for how these tools can help you, help us understand that. So if you can just take a minute to respond to the poll question, select all that applies. Give us some great visibility.
I was going to say, Susie, hopefully they can select all that applies. I saw some notes that on the last question, people could only select one. So, not to get into political humor, but maybe it's time for a recount. But
pick your favorite child.
Pick your favorite. My apologies, we didn't set this up. But if you can only select one, then select which is your most important, right?
Very good. Yeah, this guidance helps us with directing us with our roadmaps and knowing where the priorities are. So it's great to get this real-time feedback from you. And for the added benefit of your CPE credit, for those of you who do answer the poll questions, that's good to see. Very good. Fantastic. Well, I see a nice majority in solving key gaps. So hopefully we're able to do that with the Plus tools. And so appreciate that feedback.
Susie, I think that's a great indicator. We in some future sessions should spend some more time on that as well. Really go into some of the details there. So logical next step there. Thank you so much, Susie, for that. For walking through that. We're at that time now. Q&A and wrap up. I do want to, we'll go through the questions here. I do want to, before I get to that, thank everybody for attending today and sticking with us for an hour here late in the day. And I've been tracking the attendance, and boy, we've held pretty steady through the whole session in terms of folks listening and participating. So I guess just to wrap up, the point today was to, obviously as kind of Susie alluded to, from a macro level down to a micro level, really show you some of the solutions, what we're doing from an integration, from a Plus Tools standpoint, some of the things that we're doing to try to help you get through and process change, to keep you aligned internally with your organizations being able to do your jobs. So thank you for attending. We're going to look at the questions here. Susie, we have a question. How do we contact LCR for a solution like Scout or Vertex? Oh, you're answering.
I'll just answer that straight up. So you can contact your Vertex rep for that. All of the tools that we've walked through today can be licensed through Vertex. So that's the nice thing. It keeps everything on your Vertex contract. You just add it as an addendum. Feel free to reach out to your Vertex rep for that, or you can certainly reach out to me directly as well.
You answered around vendor recon and Scout. There was a question, is Scout standard?
Hey, Brian, do you mind moving the slide forward just in case?
Sure.
Need
just so everyone has the info.
Yeah, and the CPE credits, I don't know how they could get it. To Robert Westgate's question earlier. We just don't want the session to end without giving that information.
Yeah, and I'm gonna. When we get to that, I think Olivia has some words on that at the end here. Let's see. Download the presentation, and Olivia, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm not sure the presentations are downloaded. I know they're available for rewatching over time. And maybe Olivia, you'll address that at the end. With questions here. Already licensed for vendor recon for VAT. Yep, separate license. Susie, here's one, Flux Builder. When is that available, and how does one get a demo for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're expecting that's going to be available. We're still in kind of development. We are looking for an early adopter, so reach out to me if you're interested in becoming an early adopter. We would expect that's probably the first iteration of Flux Builder will probably be in first quarter of next year.